The year 2020 was filled with many challenges and opportunities along the way. Last September, we weren't able to gather in Tyson Hall for a full church assembly to do our regular update. We had hoped that by this time in January that we might be at a place that would allow that. However, even with the vaccine being given at this point, well, we're still not at the place where we need that large of a gathering. And so we're coming to you again through video. We're excited about where we are as we enter 2021. We're excited about where God is taking us as a church and what God is doing in the life of this church. And I hope that by the end of this update, you'll be excited too.
In October 2019, around 100 members of our staff and our church worked together to ask, what are we going to do next? Our church achieved a place of stability with a large variety of desirable programs and ministries. However, we had not seen significant change in our attendance, and we felt that there was so much more that we could do to grow spiritually. So how could we leverage to the next level? What we concluded was that though we had a lot of really good things going on, they were not tied to our mission, which is to provide a community where every person can experience their Christ-centered life of purpose. Also, there was no progression or plan related to all the activities that we offered. So what are you supposed to do next? To grow into a healthy future, we needed an intentional, clearly marked path of spiritual growth for those who are attending. This path needed next step options that would enable people to progress more deeply in their faith. Equally important, all of our activities needed to point persons to the path. Everything that we put energy into needed to be purposeful. And so began the discipleship pathway. The discipleship pathway provides next steps in 5 key areas of our spiritual lives: worship, serving others in need, volunteering in ministries inside the church, learning in small groups, and generosity. The pathway crosses those 5 areas of faith with 3 different steps that are kind of typical for us. One is when we're discovering faith. Secondly, when we engage more deeply. And thirdly, when we are really at a point where our life is being transformed or transformation to a deeper level of commitment. Next steps are provided for each of these 5 areas at each of the 3 steps of formation. We also realized that for the discipleship pathway to really work, there was certain pieces of our DNA that really had to be strong. First, for those who are part of the church, we all have to work on and keep developing the courage and intentionality to invite persons to events and groups where they can discover God and the church. We can spend all kinds of money on social media and media invitations, but the reality is that most people come to a church because someone they knew invited them, someone that they trusted asked them to come. And so we've got to work on being willing and able and having the courage to ask and invite people and provide opportunities that people would want to come to. Second, growing churches believe and practice the discipline of prayer. Prayer somehow opens up our lives and our church to God's possibilities. When you look at churches that have grown, somewhere and somehow prayer has become integral to who they are. And third, persons who have begun to mature in their faith have to move from just participating to being a leader. That's a hard step, and it's easier, a whole lot easier, just to stay at participant level. Most of us never feel like we're qualified to become a leader, and so we kind of stay at that spot. But if the discipleship pathway is to happen, we need lots of leaders, and we need people sort of aware from the beginning that leadership is an expectation of what it means to mature in Christ. And so we pray that these 3 parts can become part of the DNA for us here at Vestavia Methodist, thus enabling the discipleship pathway to work. Now, there are several electronic tools that we also needed to make for this to happen. Our new database is called Touchpoint, and I'm excited to say that it is up and running, and it has a live app that allows persons to sign up for opportunities and look for next step opportunities. Our new website should be live sometime in February, and it will explain and map out next steps more clearly. Our database and then website will be able to be interactive at that point for much easier access of information. Now, many of the plans that we came up with in 2019 were made prior to COVID, and some of those have been put on hold. But many of our plans, especially our virtual options, were ramped up, and we sped those on along. We're currently offering 5 different sets of new small groups that started in January. I calculate that we had about 30 groups starting around the same time. We're also excited that many persons new to our congregation have been able to begin serving even during the pandemic, greeting and ushering in our services each week. So I'd like to thank those who are finding this as their next step in their pathway in following Jesus Christ. And now, John Sweeney, who is coordinating all of the parts of the disciple path, will give us an idea of how it works, particularly in 2 areas: learning in small groups and serving others who are in need.
Hi, I'm John Sweeney, and I'm helping to shape and lead how the discipleship pathway comes into formation in a practical way. So now I'd like to talk about how the discipleship pathway may look as we're looking at learning in small groups. For instance, step 1, our discovering phase, would be something like taking the Alpha Bible study, maybe the Marriage Enrichment course, or the Empty Nesters series. From there, you might transition into step 2, our engaging phase, where you might participate in a Bible study like The Chosen, or a sermon Bible study series that's 3 to 5 weeks in length, or maybe you are actively engaged in one of our multitudes of traditional Sunday school classes that have been meeting in this church. Some of them have been meeting for decades. And then maybe a third step as you move into our transforming phase. You might be engaged in short track disciple Bible studies, similar to the Bill and Kip's excellent Bible adventures that they've been showing and we've been working through collectively. Maybe you are engaged in a long-term small group that studies together and prays together on a regular basis. Maybe you even engage in a weekend retreat, something similar to Walk for Emmaus, or something similar where your spiritual growth is deeply developed. Those are the 3 steps that you might see in learning in small groups. Now we'll look at those same 3 steps when we're looking at the perspective of serving others in need. So step 1 might be something simple, like a 5-minute mission where we're assembling kits for those that have been impacted by a natural disaster. By no means is that small in magnitude. It's simply a simple process that one might engage in with your entire family, introducing yourself or your family into the concept of what it means to be in mission. You might maybe provide supplies for a homeless shelter when we have a need for, say, coats around the Christmas time, or toys for children through our Angel Tree ministry. Step 2 in serving others in need, our engaging phase, might be where you transition into a volunteering several hours a week, maybe 1 or 2 hours, maybe a month, in serving meals in food shelters or helping distribute food through our food pantry. Maybe you assist in our car ministry, something a little more elaborate and in-depth than the first step, but not yet a full, deep mission transforming experience. Step 3 would be our transforming experience, something where that service and mission really becomes a defining characteristic of who you are. Maybe you serve with First Light Ministry. Maybe you become a Family Promise host here in our church when we host our Family Promise ministry. Maybe you engage in a weekend experience in the Kairos prison ministry teams. Or maybe you're able to engage for a week-long trip, perhaps to our Costa Rica mission partner, or perhaps to our Ghana mission partner as well. Maybe that transforming mission experience comes in the form of serving on our Appalachian Service Project team trips that are involved with our student ministries. Those are just examples of how the discipleship pathway, how you can move through each step, whether it's in worship or serving others or learning in small groups or even generosity. We look forward to engaging with each of you as a part of our discipleship pathway.
I have a lot of exciting things to share with you. I am happy to report that our giving over the past year has been very strong, despite the pandemic and several months where we had no church services or programming. This is truly a congregation that is generous in supporting God's church, and we want to thank you. Our fiscal year runs from July through June, so every summer we study your giving patterns and our expense patterns very closely to establish a budget that's based on those numbers and set to end the year at zero. Almost every time I have met with you for a financial update, we have been behind in our giving compared to that budget. Today I'm excited to be here and tell you that we are slightly ahead of budget and starting 2021 in a good financial position. Our ministry team leaders and our staff have also worked hard to control spending, to be the best stewards of all of our resources, and that has also helped us start the new year in the black. Also, all of our auxiliary ministries, the day school, Vestavia dance, and the Conservatory of the Arts are doing well financially, even though each of them is dependent upon tuition and payment income. Each of them responded well to the challenges of COVID and redesigned their business plans. This planning, along with a PPP loan, which by the way has now been completely forgiven, has entitled them to keep meeting the needs of the congregation and our community. Your generosity and faithful stewardship has brought us to this point, and together we can build on this great start to the year. We are only halfway through this fiscal year, and we still need your donations to continue providing programming and spiritual guidance in the midst of COVID-19. In addition to our income and expenses, our cash reserves are very strong, and our only liability is a construction loan currently at $45,000. This is from our next capital campaign, and you'll hear more about that in just a minute. Our goal is to pay off this loan and be debt-free once more. Thinking back to my first meeting at this church, which was over 9 years ago, the highest priority was to increase our line of credit with the bank from $250,000 to $500,000. That line of credit is used to borrow for deficit months each year, and it had been used at least once each year until November of 2019. I am very happy to report that we have now gone 26 months without borrowing from these funds. Because of your donations and the reserves that you have enabled us to build, we have been able to pay our bills each month. And, of course, all of this was done without using a dime from our separate designated fund accounts, which are fully funded at $707,000. I also have some great news to share about our foundation. The foundation board manages 10 funds that now total over $2 million. One of those funds, the Permanent Endowment Fund, was formed in 2014 when we merged the Z Club Fund with 3 other funds. At the point of that merger, the endowment had $571,000. Since then, we have taken out 4% each year from the earnings for special projects in the church in the areas of either facilities, missions, or programming. The goal of the Z Club that many of you were involved with was to provide a fund that would grow to $1 million, providing over $40,000 a year in additional income to the church. Well, I'm very happy to say that the fund closed the year 2020 with $1,077,000 in total value. So we reached that goal. Finally, we have just received our final audit from fiscal year 2020 from our independent auditors, Borland Benefield. Once more, we did something unique in the auditing field. We had a flawless audit. That means every one of the hundreds of reviewed transactions of the church were properly documented and had all the proper receipts attached. and that is for $4.5 million worth of transactions. That is all to Natalie Geeson's credit as our Director of Finance, and we thank you, Natalie. We will continue to do audits each year of our finances for your confidence and credibility. If you'd like to get a copy of this recent audit, please let me know. It's a pleasure to serve you as your business administrator. If you ever have questions about the business side of the church, please don't hesitate to call me. I want to conclude by again thanking you. This is a congregation that's very generous in supporting God's church. We really appreciate that, and we take very seriously the responsibility of carefully spending what you give. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Brad Kimbrough and Kim Pruitt, who graciously and sacrificially have co-chaired our next capital improvement campaign. This campaign started in October of 2017, and it is almost over.
Hello, I'm Brad Kimbrough, and I'm here with Kim Pruitt, and we've had the honor to co-chair the next campaign. You may remember that began in 2017, and we're right at the point now where we hope to end all our financial commitments, and so we want to give you a bit of an update. When we started the campaign, we received pledges from the congregation for approximately $4.5 million of funds. In addition to that, we had about $200,000 that was given to the campaign in an unpledged capacity. So we had a little over $4.7 million of funds coming in. And the really good news is that we have received almost all of that money, but there is still a little bit that we want to try to collect. So what we have not done is we've not overspent what we expect to collect. And that was a commitment that we made to you all in the congregation a couple years ago. We have $45,000 that's left on our construction line. And if we can get everyone to fulfill their commitments over the next couple of weeks, maybe the next couple of months, then we'll be in good shape to pay that off. We had originally thought that at the end of 2020, we would end the time frame for people to make their financial commitments, but with the pandemic hitting in 2020, we extended that time to June of 2021. So we're in a really good spot, and just asking for everyone, maybe you're new to the church and haven't even had a chance to join us in this process, maybe you can give, or if you're on the side of the fence where you're almost fulfilling your commitment but haven't quite gotten there yet, we'd appreciate it if everybody can go ahead and get that done.
Your contributions to this campaign have been a huge blessing to the church. We've been able to accomplish so much already, and we can see the fruits of our labor right here in Tyson Hall, which was totally renovated. Also in the sanctuary, which was we had upgrades in our audio-visual and lighting, and then a complete overhaul of the air conditioning system, including a system called iWave, which helps to scrub the air of viruses. At the time, we called this the next campaign because we were setting the stage for what God had in store for us and for this at this church for in the future, in the near future. We wanted to be able to set the stage for future generations to enjoy this building, this facility, the way we had. But who knew that all that would happen in 2020 and the need for virtual capabilities that not only this facility but also in the sanctuary provided for us. This is a virtual studio where we have been able to film Bible studies and sermon series to be able to reach people throughout the pandemic when we were all isolated. So we are thrilled with the results of this campaign. We appreciate each and every one of you and your gifts and your prayers and your offerings to this, and we can't wait to see what happens next.
One of my favorite passages of Scripture is Isaiah 55, verses 8 and 9. That passage says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." Sometimes we may not see it in the moment, But when we look back, we see that God truly does know more than we know, and that God has a plan and a purpose for each of us and for our church. God is always calling us forward as His church, if we're willing to follow. As strange as it may sound, this past year gave us the opportunity to see some of the things that God was doing, though we didn't know it at the time. About 4 decades ago, when the Tyson addition was built, we could have never known that the ramp and its shade out back would become the chancel area for our only in-person worship service for about 4 months. Or that it would actually be a worship place for 8 months now and counting. 20 years ago, when the lighthouse was built, the porte-cochere was used to drop off kids for upward sports or for Vestavia dance or adults for Sunday school classes or some other activity like that. We could have never known that that area would also allow our team of amazing volunteers to fully redesign our food pantry and reopen as a drive-through, which has allowed them to meet the rising need for food in our area. A few years ago, when we redesigned Tyson and we improved the lighting and the staging and the sound system for our contemporary worship service and other activities, we could have never known that we would need to use this area to record music for online worship, to film Bible studies, to film a virtual vacation Bible camp, and so much more. When we updated the sound system in the sanctuary and installed a screen and improved our cameras and our connectivity from there, we could have never known that we would need a screen in order to have lyrics and liturgy for worship in person, and that we would have nearly 3 months when the only worship service we could offer was online, and nearly 7 months where the only service offered from inside our building would be online. When we modified the chancel area to the sanctuary and we removed the large built-in planters, we hoped that it would allow for better spacing for weddings and for other worship experiences. We could have never known that the extra space would allow our choir to socially distance so that they could provide music for online worship and in-person worship. When we changed out our HVAC system throughout the bulk of our building, we knew that it'd provide us with a system that functioned better and could actually be serviced. We could have never known that the system would allow us to integrate the iWave system that would scrub the air and provide us healthier air to breathe when we returned inside the building. When we began improving our Wi-Fi and our internet connectivity, the intent was we wanted to help our Sunday school classes be able to have resource material for lessons on Sunday morning. We could have never known that we would need to develop online and hybrid Sunday school classes and online and hybrid small groups. But now through the efforts of Kelly Botcher and Suzanne Scott Trammell, John Sweeney, Jeremiah Stone, Kinsey Butler, and an amazing team of teachers and leaders, we currently have 339 adults and 169 students in either online, in-person, or hybrid small group discipleship formation. I guess the list could go on and on of what God was doing and what we could have never known at the time. God has always had a plan for this congregation, and you have always faithfully responded. You have given and you have served and you have trusted that God's thoughts and ways are greater and higher than ours. As you heard today, your faithfulness, your service, your generosity have helped our church be ready for anything and everything that God will call us to do and to help Him accomplish this year. Through the disciples' path, everyone has the opportunity to grow in their faith and in their relationship with God, their relationship with each other. And through your generosity, we are able to respond to any opportunity that God gives us. We are able to continue developing new ways to connect with one another and to our community and to grow together. We can never know what God is going to call us to do next. How God is going to call us to serve next. And we may not even know the full result, the full impact for years. But I know that if we continue to be faithful in following God's lead, then we will continue to make a difference in our community and in our world, and we will continue to help God build the kingdom of God here. As always, it is a tremendous honor to be your pastor, to get to be in ministry with each and every one of you, and to be in ministry with the amazing team of people that make up this staff. I can't wait to see what the rest of 2021 holds for us as we're faithful to follow wherever God leads.